This is LT1C Notes Part 1, Interval Notation. So in this section we will be reviewing interval notation, which uses parentheses or brackets to define sets on the number line. So we have that for interval notation, we have parentheses when we don't want to include a point, and we have brackets when we do want to include a point. This is what we have learned to kind of take the place of set builder notation, which you used to use in, say, middle school. And the way it works is if you see an open circle, then you're using a parentheses because we don't include that point. If you see a closed circle or a filled-in circle, then we are using a bracket to denote that we are including the point. Some notes. We always list the domain or range from least to greatest. So on the number line, least to greatest is left to right. If instead of dots, we have arrows, that indicates that the graph goes on forever. And so we use negative infinity if it goes to the left forever, and we use positive infinity if it goes to the right forever. Because infinity is not considered a number, the joke I like to say is it's too big to handle, so we don't include infinity, and so we always use parentheses. And then if there are any gaps in our number line, then we need to link those gaps together using this U symbol, which stands for union, and it's like the math equivalent of the word or. Okay. So here we have a couple examples of some number lines using the points A and B. And we're not going to be really working with set builder notation. So in our first line, notice that we have a left arrow, and then we have a right arrow, and there's no breaks or anything. So the way that we can use this is the left arrow indicates that our graph starts at negative infinity. It'll go to positive infinity, and then note the parentheses used for both, because again, we always use parentheses with infinity. And a description of this is to say that the x is all real numbers. Moving on, again, starting from left to right, notice that we start at the point A. And because it's an open circle, we do not include the point, so we'll use a parentheses, comma, and then from here, if you imagine taking your pencil and tracing it along the line, we then hit a right arrow, and the right arrow indicates positive infinity, and then we again use parentheses. Moving on, taking your pencil, notice that the first thing we touch is a left arrow. So the left arrow indicates that the graph starts at negative infinity. And then tracing your pencil along the line, we hit a closed circle. And so the closed circle is at the point B. And then because it's a closed circle, we do include the point. So we use a bracket. Moving on. Same deal. Take your pencil, start at the leftmost section of the graph. We have an open circle at A, and because it's an open circle, we use parentheses. Tracing your pencil along the graph, we hit an open circle at B. And then again, because it's an open circle, we use a parentheses. Moving on, pencil, leftmost, starts at A with a closed circle, so we include A, and we will include it using a bracket. Tracing along the line, we hit an open circle at B, so we stop at B, and then we use an open circle. Okay, next up, here's where things get a little interesting. Taking your pencil, starting at the left, we hit a left arrow, so we'll use negative infinity with a parentheses for the left arrow. tracing along the line, we hit an open circle at A. And so we have A not included, denoted by a parentheses. And then notice that there's this gap here. And so I'll use brown for this gap. Because there's a gap, and then the graph will then continue, we use this union symbol to link them together. And then continuing on, we have a closed circle at B. So closed circle means include, use a bracket, comma, and then continuing on, we hit a right arrow. So right arrow denoted by positive infinity, and we use a parentheses for all infinities. Next, this one's a little weird, but going from left to right, well, we have A here, and then that's it. It's literally the point A. And because it's a circle that's filled in, we use a bracket because we do want to include that point. Then we have this gap, so we'll link by a union. We have an open circle at B, so B with a parentheses, and then continuing, we go to the right, so that's positive infinity. And lastly, starting from left to right, we hit an arrow, which indicates negative infinity. And then moving on, we hit A with an open circle. So we'll use a parentheses for the open circle. And then it doesn't feel like it, but realize that because the circle is not filled in, there is a gap. And then the graph does continue. So because there is a gap, even though it's a quote tiny gap, we do need to use our union symbol. And then from here, where does the graph start off? Well, it still does start off at A, because that's where the gap is, but in this case, we will also use a parentheses, and then continuing to the right, we hit a right arrow, which will denote with positive infinity. And that is our review of interval notation.